Hey guys, welcome back to the Vitalic Performance Podcast. Today, I want to talk about a little bit about cold plunging and chocolate. So it's a funny mix, and I'll tell you how we get there. So, being that I live down in Mexico and before in Canada, I was doing a lot of cold plunging, and we had access to things like cold water. You can just turn on a cold tap, and all year round, it comes out as cold almost as you want it. And moving down to Mexico, that is not the case. Their infrastructure systems are different. They don't have access to cold water all year round or any time of year. Literally, maybe in the dead of winter, if you turn on just the cold water on full blast in the shower, first thing in the morning, that first little bit of water is enough to take your breath away, but that's about it. And so I was informed by a friend of mine that there was a place opening up. There was a little cafe where they made chocolate, and they were hosting ice bath days. So it started with every Sunday we're going to ice baths. And this gentleman that we have right here is Eduardo, and him and his wife Laura have started this place called Raices Chocolate, where they make artisanal chocolate and they also host ice baths. So Eduardo, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us, Kai. Thank you very much.
Yeah, of course. Now, so I don't know exactly where to start. So I believe you started with chocolate and worked your way into being a craft or a artisanal chocolatier. Is that the right terminology?
Yeah, it would.
Okay, so tell me about that. How did you get into making craft chocolate, and why?
So it all started from curiosity, like a lot of things do. I'm very passionate over history and ancient civilizations. So actually 7 years ago, I had no idea that chocolate came from cacao. In a museum that opened up here in Puerto Vallarta, I came across a lot of information about how cacao has been in history throughout Mexico's timeline. And that started opening up this curiosity of what's so special about this seed. Humans have seeked this seed for thousands of years. We have evidence that the seed dates back to more than 5,000 years ago, and it's been utilized by dozens of different cultures all throughout Mexico for different reasons: medicinal, ceremonial, political. It was our first coin here in Mexico, so it has great value in a lot of different aspects of it.
The cacao seed was the first form of currency?
That's right. That's right.
Like
That
dating
was
back to like Mayan times or what?
Mayan times, and even before that, with other cultures in Mexico, like the Zapotecos in Oaxaca, also even Tolteca. So it was used as a trading, as form of a trade, like trueque.
Yeah.
So yeah, and actually we have found sacks of cacao with clay in the inside. They just covered it with the cacao shell. So even counterfeiting was a thing back in the days.
Oh my goodness. How would they make, like, can you break the shell off like a kind of like a nut, or how does that even work?
Yeah. So for example, I have a seed here, and I'll take the actual cacao seed, which is what gets processed into making chocolate, and then the seed, the shell, would then be filled with clay.
No
And
way.
hmm
They would counterfeit cacao beans.
yes,
That's crazy. Okay, so you were learning about the history and you were learning about the significance of cacao. Like, how does this end up you being a craft chocolatier?
yeah. So the more and more I get into it, I start seeing cacao everywhere. Notice it when I go to a restaurant and a convenience store, even just people's household. I see that this seed is found anywhere. And as we're talking, I'm sure there's someone celebrating a birthday, a baptism, something where cacao's in front of them, even if it's a small trace. So then I further on, I started taking classes, went down to Chiapas to the Academy of Cacao. As funny as that
No
sounds, we
way.
have that in Mexico.
Beautiful.
So started getting more into it. And the more I got into it, the more passionate I became over it. Also in my personal life, incorporating it for this different medicinal values, this nutritional value, and also even the spiritual value that it has. It really does help you become gives you that sensitivity to allow yourself to feel emotions. And so it's definitely been a cool journey. So then I began doing walking tours through the different chocolate shops in Puerto Vallarta. I did that for about a year.
Very
Um,
cool.
and one of the things that I realized was that one of the things that was lacking, I felt, was that people didn't see the roots of this product. So chocolate began after the 19th century during the Industrial Revolution, and the first chocolate bar gets created approximately 177 years ago. So it's very, very recent, actually, that we've had chocolate bars. But
Hmm.
before that, for thousands of years, cacao was used for food, medicine, drinks, everything but chocolate bars. So this is where the name Raices comes from. Raices means roots, and it's just is trying to get people to also learn a little more in depthness about cacao, because sometimes chocolate has a bad connotation because of what a lot of candy makers have done to it.
Hmm.
So now we're
Highly
just trying to.
processed, sugary, and not being healthy, not something that's good for you. It's kind of associated with that. So I hear you. And you're drinking it right
Right.
now, aren't you?
Yes.
Is that one
We
off the
try to.
menu, or is that your own concoction that you've made there?
It's one off the menu. It's actually the one with mushrooms. It's cordyceps, lion's mane, chaga, reishi, um, and turkey tail. Yeah, and it's just with water, no sugar, just 100%. I enjoy the taste of cacao.
Okay, so that's one. So that would be one without milk.
Right.
Like, because when so just for a visualization here, when you go to Raices Chocolate in Puerto Vallarta, where they've got their cafe set up with the ice plunges, you basically walk in to what looks like a house, and he's sitting. Are you in the front lobby right now?
Yes, I'm in
Yeah,
the front.
yeah. So you're in the front lobby, and you actually walk through the kitchen to get to the backyard. Then it's just like this quiet, beautiful oasis with like it's like a big hill of different levels going up to the back of the yard, and they've got different seating areas, um, and cold plunges, and they always have nice music, ambient music on with like often it's like sound bowl type music, and then they got a spot up with a hammock at the top of the hill where they got mats set up so you can do yoga or meditation or whatever it is you want to do. It's just such a cool atmosphere. And then on their menu is a bunch of different drinks that are all cacao based, and then a bunch of food that all has cacao integrated into it. So it's such a cool place. So when I'm talking about all these different menu drinks, that's what we're talking about. So I mean, my go-to so far has been it's a hot chocolate with fermented chocolate as opposed to washed chocolate with regular milk, and adding in, is it the same proprietary blend of mushrooms that you're drinking right now that's in the one on your menu?
Yeah. hmm
Beautiful. That is my go-to drink. So that's really cool. So you've built this cafe. You've discovered and learnt, and you're enthralled by the wisdom that cacao brings, and you've brought this in. So not only do you have a cafe that serves cacao, but you're also an artisanal chocolate maker. So like what does that process look like? Where do you have it set up? Like tell me the whole thing. Tell me everything.
Yeah, so you mentioned something earlier about the feel being a house, because this actually was our house. A year ago, um, when we were looking for a place to open, because it was taking us some time, we decided to just start allowing people to come in and just kind of get to know us. So we opened doors to our house, and it was literally, I mean, you would walk in. We have pictures and videos still that time. We had our couch, all of our furniture. Our bed was in the other room where now it's a production. The kitchen had nothing set up the way it is now. We didn't have a coffee maker. We just had one pot. We would offer one drink. So it was something that it was throughout time we were starting to kind of see this place now more and more. It's like maybe we can turn this into the chocolate shop. Um, so that's kind of how that arose, and we started incorporating ice for ourselves and just inviting friends. It was never an idea to continue to do this as a business. We invited 12 friends the first time. We provided fruit for everybody. And when people would come out of the tub, it was, they would say, hey, do you know you're cold? And say, let me get a hot chocolate. So then the idea just started kind of like developing just so naturally. And then now we found ourselves moving out of our original home. We actually were able to rent next door, which was a something amazing that happened.
No
and now
kidding.
We're slowly turning this place into the chocolate shop. You asked me about the process of how chocolate is made.
Yeah.
We have the production inside of what used to be our room next behind the kitchen.
Yeah.
And cacao takes approximately 2.5 days to process for you to finally have the final product of chocolate. So you have the seed. You would then toast it with the shell, take the shell off. Then we would grind this. But after grinding it, we're going to refine it for 48 hours, day and night in a machine.
What are you using to grind it?
The first grind is an electrical 1 horsepower grinder. So we'll grind up to about 15 kilos every time.
Okay.
And that gives us a liquid. And that's because cacao contains 50% cacao butter. It's a natural fat that's found in cacao, has tons of antioxidants. It's actually one of its properties that has the most benefits in cacao. And because of that, when you apply heat to cacao, it will actually turn into a liquid. This liquid is called cacao liqueur, which is then taken into a refining machine where it's now refined for 48 hours so the particles can become smaller and smaller and smaller, and you can have a chocolate that you can now put in your mouth and will melt and feel smooth and creamy, like we're used to.
What is the actual process of refining doing? I know you said it compresses it down, but like what is the mechanism at which it takes it from one state to another?
So it's 2 stone wheels that are crushing down all the ingredients, and then at the same time the machine is moving in a circular motion where it's also conching the cacao. So this is removing acidity. Just like in wine, if you were to pour yourself a glass and smell it, it would be very strong. You would want to air it so you can be able to perceive all the different notes in it. And this way, in cacao, it's the same thing. If you don't conch chocolate, you're going to get a very acidic chocolate. It has high astringency, and this is normally what a lot of people will try and why they'll say they don't like dark chocolate.
Because a part of me kind of digs the bitterness. I love dark chocolate.
Yeah.
I mean, I buy a bar almost every time I go to your guys' shop.
Yeah.
and that's the beautiful thing. Like, you guys have the process from A to Z. I don't know where you guys get the cacao beans from. Is that the right term? A bean? Cacao bean?
Yeah, there's people call it cacao beans, cacao almonds, cacao seeds.
So there is no wrong way. I can call them any of the above.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So like, how do you source your cacao, and where does it come from?
So we have direct contact with the 3 producers that we get our cacao from, and it's down in Chiapas, in the south part of Chiapas, in the jungle called Soconusco. We don't work with anybody that works with some of the bigger companies, because some of these bigger companies have created genetically modified cacaos that are now single crop trees, which cacao is not like that at all. Cacao needs shade from other trees. It's not a single crop. You can't just grow it as a single crop. It works in an agro system.
I don't think any one plant thrives in having nothing but that one plant in any ecosystem.
Right.
I think monocropping is just stripping the nutritional value and life out of everything.
Exactly.
Personally, so that's beautiful, and that's why. I mean, I didn't know that leading up to it, but I had a feeling that you guys were getting it all from sourced. I mean, you guys right on the box say what region the cacao that's used to make that chocolate is come from. So I know that I'm getting as little refined and as direct to the source and close to nature chocolate as I can when I'm buying from you guys, and it's delicious.
Hmm. Thank you.
I love that. Yeah, no, thank you. So you've got the chocolate. So now you have the bars. Do you just put them in molds and then cool them, or is that the end of the process, or what's next?
So the last process before packaging, this is actually also kind of where ice has kind of meets also with cacao as far as health benefits. So we have to temper chocolate. To temper chocolate, I have to melt it at 45 degrees Celsius and then put it in a marble table and bring it down, move it as fast as I can so I can bring the temperature all the way to 28 degrees Celsius. So I go from 45 to 28 and then bring it back up to 32. By tempering the chocolate, you now have a chocolate that you can touch and it's not going to melt in your hands. It's going to have that strength. And I compare that a lot when I tell people about things like sweat lodges, temazcales, and ice bath. This concept is the same thing that you do with metal to create a sword, per se. So that hardness, that stiffness, through tempering, it's also being done for oneself, for people when we do these kind of different therapies. And we definitely see it, the way that works in making chocolate.
Yeah, and I know people use the term, iron sharpens iron, and tempering is just heating something up, putting it under a certain stress, beating the piss out of it, and then it coming out stronger at the other end. So, I mean, yeah, I guess you can
Sounds
say
like
that for
ice
your
bath.
own. Yeah, it sounds like an ice bath. Sounds like doing sauna or temazcal.
Yeah.
And for anyone that's listening that doesn't know what temazcal is, it's kind of like a sweat lodge with ceremonial purposes as well, where you're sitting in a little clay. Is the whole thing made of clay?
It can be made of clay or else animal skin, or even more commonly now, they'll just put blankets over a structure that's made from tree roots.
Okay, yeah, because when I went to the only time I've done temazcal myself, I was in Huastepec, which is, do you know where Huastepec is?
No.
It's like 30 minutes east of Tepoztlan, where the big
Oh.
pyramids are on top of the mountain in that Pueblo Mágico. It's such a cool place. Yeah, it is. And so they had this like visitor vacation center in Huastepec. And we went in there and they had a temazcal ceremony. So we had a guy come in, and actually it was really cool because it was me, my buddy Sebastian, who I think you've met Sebastian. He's Mexican, but he grew up in Canada. So he speaks fluent of both English and Spanish. And then my buddy Keldon. And because the guy was walking us through this whole process inside the temazcal and like teaching us about the history of it and like why we're doing what we're doing and kind of facilitating a whole experience, Sebastian actually translated the whole thing into English while sitting in the temazcal, and it was actually such a cool experience. Then they take the leaves and they're lashing us with the leaves in the water and then unleashing all the steam, and you're just sitting on a clay foundation. So the floor was still fairly cool, which was kind of surprising. But it's as much as there is ceremonial, there's still the same benefits that you get from like a sauna and a steam room and those sorts of things. There are a sweat lodge. So that's temazcal that we're talking about. So that's pretty cool. So you temper the chocolate, and then you get to just do you then heat it to the desired temperature to be able to package it properly to get it into the molds?
Yeah. So once I bring it down to 28, I'll add a little bit more chocolate to that mix to raise it to about 32 degrees. And then this way it gives me time to be able to put it into molds. If I'm going to add toppings, I can do that. And then just put it in the fridge for about 15-20 minutes, and chocolate bars are come out, package them up, and ready to go.
That's so cool. Okay, so then we've already crossed paths with ice a little bit here. So you and your wife have obviously found some sort of benefit and some sort of calling for your own personal selves to be doing ice baths all the time. Like, where to walk me through that? How did you find cold baths and cold plunging and to get it where it is today?
Yeah, so it's really interesting how life works. And about 7 years ago, I went through the first time I've ever experienced a depression where I couldn't come out of the house. I had no motivation whatsoever. It was after a breakup of a not so good relationship. And so this got me to a place where I didn't want to do any of the techniques that I had learned, like meditating or yoga. I couldn't get my mind to think of me doing something like that for an hour.
Mm.
So I come across this video of this guy. I'd never heard about Wim Hof, never didn't know anything about him. And I hear a story about his wife committing suicide and him then having to go out and try to find something to re-find himself. He has, uh, and then he starts talking about obviously ice, but more importantly, the breath work. So I was like, okay, 10 minutes I can do. I mean, at this point, I'll try anything. I need to, come out of this. And so I did start doing the breath work. It's just 10 minutes a day. We do it in the mornings, afternoons, and then right before I would go to sleep. And within 3 days, I was able to completely change the chemistry in my brain. I would be actually really excited to start the Wim Hof breath. I actually did it continuously for about 2 weeks every day and found great benefits. At that time, it wasn't as easy to access ice baths, so I didn't try it then. But last year, I was able to have my first ice plunge. I wanted to do it for 7 years since I started doing the Wim Hof breathing technique.
Okay.
And wow, I mean, it just all clicked. It makes sense why you practice this breath work. I mean, and that day actually that we did ice bath, we were on the bus going home and I was on Mercado Libre ordering a tub for myself. So that was how everything got started. And that day I sent a message to friends. I said, hey, got a nice plunge. Come on over. Let's anybody that wants to come along. We're also going to be opening up we also have our chocolate shop. So, and yeah, that's how we got started with ice bath. It was through the breath work.
Very cool. So when you were talking about doing breath work, were you doing any one particular modality that was really helping you reframe things and just like you were saying, it changed the chemistry in your brain. It changed the way your thoughts were happening and what sequence and what vibration your thoughts are coming from. So
Mm-hmm.
like, was it a holotropic breath? Was it more of a, like, what were you doing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's the basic one you start off with is 10 minutes, it's 3 rounds, it's 30 breaths deep into your diaphragm and then breathe out. On the 30th, you're going to exhale completely and then hold. Within the first 20 seconds, you're going to feel cortisol rising and sympathetic system kick in. So right away, you're like, I'm not breathing, we're going to die. Same thing that happens in the ice. Through the breath work, you've oxygenated your body. So then you come actually to realize that it's more of a mind. It's almost a sensation that's telling you that you're going to die because you're not breathing, but you're actually okay. So then you're actually able to now move this pressure that you start to feel in your head and in your chest. And you're actually able to now move that energy throughout your body. And you're able to slowly bring in your cortisol levels and start to feel more relaxed and calm just within 10 minutes.
So that's really cool. That breathing technique is the exact breathing technique I do almost every single day. I don't know if you've seen it, but on my Instagram, I started this thing. I call it the Mind Over Mastery morning routine. I just made it up. It's a series of things that I do to
Love
improve my physiology and kickstart my day. So every day, today is day 27. I have my red light panel right here. I sit in front of the red light panel and I just meditate. And that form of meditation, like, it can look so different for other people, but all it is focusing on the sensation of breathing. And anytime that I become aware that I'm thinking of something other than the sensation of breathing, I say, okay, I see you. Thank you. I don't need you right now, and
Right.
send it back to where it came from and recenter on the sensation of breathing. So part number one. Then I go downstairs, I get hydrated. I just drink some electrolytes and some water and whatever else. Today I had some watermelon. And then I do my cold plunge. And it's been a very interesting sequence watching how I'm able to control my breath from the beginning. Even when I was doing them on a regular basis once a week, going to your guys' facility, I had a hard time regaining control of my breath. And just like you were saying with the cortisol levels, you're having to switch off that central nervous system and switch operating systems, go from the sympathetic to the parasympathetic, and like training your body that, okay, I got this, I'm in control. Like, you're not going to die. I know I have like with the breath work, I know I have a body full of oxygen, and there's no need to panic that I'm not breathing right now. We're at an exhale. Everything's good. And it's the same thing with getting in the water. Getting to control your breath is what's switching you over from fight or flight, sympathetic, over to the parasympathetic. And then I get out and I go, I walk around the front of my house because I usually do it in the morning. So that's like one of the spots where I get direct sunlight because there's trees and buildings around me. So I sit at the end of my driveway, I put my feet in the grass, so I'm getting grounded, and I'm getting the morning sunlight on my skin, and I do exactly what you said for the breath work cycle, and then that's my morning routine. And
that's amazing.
I know what you're talking about, because just in the last, like, I've been doing it for 27 days, things have changed so much in my world, from my attitude to my perception of things to like literally my brain chemistry. The vehicle at which I am creating my reality around me is, everything is happening so quickly, and it's amazing. And it's incredible to get into that kind of flow state. And like, the whole point of the morning routine that I share with people isn't to, it's called Mind Over Mastery because it's not about being perfect. It's not about being an expert at anything. All these tools are just something that are challenging to you and are going to challenge you to become more in touch with yourself. And so you're just practicing on being more in control of yourself. So it's not about being perfect, because you're never going to be perfect. So I love that you've brought in, that you started with the breath work and you've brought in the exact same practices and very similar outcomes into the ice bath. So getting back to your story, you got this one ice bath. You, on your way home from your first ice bath, you ordered one on Mercado Libre and you had it on your way to your house and you started inviting friends over. So, and this is while you already had the cafe. Raices was already born.
Yeah. I had maybe 2 weeks. We had been going and just Sundays.
No way. Okay, so you are open one day a week. You are a little cafe serving a couple different chocolate products and maybe some chocolate bars. And now you've got one big tub that you fill full of ice and water, and you invite your friends along with you. Take it from there. How has it evolved like that? When was this? When did you get your ice bath?
A year and 3 months ago, approximately.
Wow, only 15 months. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think I started going in like October or November of last year. Actually October, because I got back at the beginning. I got back from Canada at the beginning of October, and then I started going right away. Very cool. So just in that small amount of time, like, explain to where you're at now. Like, what is Raices turned out to be at this moment?
Yeah. So, like I said earlier, we were able to now rent next door, which gave us access to an outdoor area that connects the Raices Chocolateria with our house. So we have access now to a bigger outdoor area. And then that started inciting us we got another tub. So we have 2 tubs now, doing ice now 2 times a week. And the drink menu went from one drink that we had available to now more than 16 different types of cacao drinks that we offer. And then food also started being incorporated for the same reason that when people would come out of the ice, there's something very special that happens when people come together and do something that challenges them. It's something that really has been what's so special to us with all this. It's people coming from a place, a true self, and meeting ourselves there and being able to now talk in a little bit of a deeper sense and connect. And then people would hang out for, a couple hours. So then we would bring out fruit bowls just to share. And then we were like, well, let's make some food. So we just started kind of making up some stuff. We started out with tacos, sopes, just kind of very basic things. But always, always having in mind, like, okay, well, if you just did all this, you probably don't want to have, a quarter-pound cheeseburger or
Yeah, you want something
anything like
healthy.
that.
You want to nourish your body with something wholesome and delightful.
Right, right. So then, I say that I'm grateful for everybody because everybody's created this. We couldn't have planned for any of this. I don't think that I would have had the imagination to put all this together. It's just, it's been listening to kind of the experience, how it's developed, how it's unfolded. And we're just so happy to be part of what it is now feels like a community. It's being able to see people walk in, being there for their process to sometimes you can tell how tense sometimes people get and just seeing them release that. It's just something really nourishing for us. And it's just been something just amazing to be part of.
Yeah, it's fairly profound, and I agree with you. What you're saying is 100% correct in that when you go there, it's a completely different atmosphere, and everyone is there to get more in touch with themselves. So the conversations you're having with people, they're not surface level conversations. Like you're meeting a stranger and you're talking about your life's purpose and the story of how you got there. Like it's so different and such a cool environment, and you've created a culture. You've created a culture where everyone's gathering to work on the same things that you value working on in your own life. And that's beautiful. I love that. I talk about creating the own culture, whether it's within your own house or your own family. But now you've been able to create an entire community that is this culture. And it's so cool. And I love to see it.
I like that, man. Thanks. Yeah, that's a really cool way to look at it.
So going into the more technicals of the cold bath. Now, this is something that you and your wife have been practicing regularly. I would assume at least twice a week. What have you noticed in the evolution of you doing the cold plunge? Like, where did you start? How difficult was it for you to start? Like I don't even know your history. I know you're originally from Mexico. Have you always lived in Mexico, or did you live in the States for a little while, or like, are you used to having cold water?
Sorta. So I was born in Puebla, and Puebla gets pretty cold
Yeah, up in
during
the
the winter.
mountains. Yeah.
And then when I was 7 years old, my dad moved to the States. So I went and lived with them in Dallas, Texas for about 16 years. And then I came back to Mexico 10 years now, actually, in October.
Very cool. Okay, so maybe not like frigid cold winters like in northern Canada or anything like that, where you have
Not at
frozen
all.
lakes to jump into. Because I think I've shown you a post on my Instagram where there's a group of us that would go cold plunging once a week back in Canada, and we had a lake that would freeze over in the winter, and we'd walk out into the lake and cut out a hole, and we had
So
a
cool.
photographer come with us one time. Yeah, it was a wild experience, and a little bit extra painful because like your arms are sitting on solid ice to hold yourself up while your body's in the water that's
Wow.
freezing cold. Like it's a different beast. So you haven't really been exposed to a whole lot of like real cold water. So how has your experience been starting out and progressing through with doing cold plunges?
Yeah. So the first time we did ice bath, it was actually a combo of a temazcal and an ice bath. I just
Oh,
went for the temazcal. Um,
okay.
I always told myself the same story that I hear every single person when they do it for the first time. The same story in my head was, I'm not a cold person. I remember when I would hang out with friends and like during winter, and I could feel myself so uncomfortably like cold. And I was like, is nobody else cold around here? Like, is there something wrong with me? So I always had such a negative story that I would tell myself when it came to cold. If it wasn't for a friend, Alan and Wendy, that were there with me, they did the ice, they tried it out, and they were like, you should try it. I'm like, no way. Like, I'm not going to do that. But they kept pushing me and pushing me and pushing me. I was like, okay, I'll give it a try. First time I went in, sensation on my feet, gone. I mean, the tinglish, it was too much. I get out within like 50 seconds. No one explained to me what was going to go on in my body. So I just freaked out. But at the same time, I felt very euphoric, and I also felt very good about myself because I had done something that was just a huge no in my mind. So
Yeah, you
overcoming
challenged
that,
yourself.
right? hmm So I knew that I wanted to. I couldn't do it at that time, but I knew that I wanted to work myself to be able to be comfortable in the ice. So then afterwards, started reading more about it. We registered for a Wim Hof course. So then we
Oh,
started taking
nice.
classes through him. So just kind of start also here learning about what's going on in the body. That's, I think, something that's helped me so much to just visualize when I'm in there, the things that are going on in the different levels of me. So now what I do when I get in the ice, it's right from the beginning, I just try to create this space, just empty space where I can see my thoughts happening. I can see my emotions happening. I can feel the certain parts of my body are colder than others, but I just observe. And I'm in this empty space where I'm not doing any type of breath work. I'm just witnessing everything that's going on. And in that space, I realize that I'm able to not identify with all these things that the mind, creates.
All the
But it's,
judgments and preconceived notions and opinions and yeah, totally. I
yeah,
hear you.
I used to think that there was going to be a point where my mind was going to be like, hey, let's go do ice, oh, we're doing ice this morning. Awesome. Great. It never happened. So I
No.
used to, and then there was a point where I was actually upset. I was like, why aren't you, getting comfortable with this? But I didn't realize, like, wow, like my mind is always looking out for me. That's amazing. And it's doing its job. And it's always going to be doing that. It takes more energy for the mind to think positive because it's designed to it's like a parent that lives with you at all
Mhm.
times.
A
So it's
helicopter
keeping you
parent.
safe. Right. And so now I just understand that that's just part of being human, and I don't focus on all the things that my mind is saying. I let it talk. And I say, hey, we're gonna go in no matter what. And that's just also why I tell people to close their eyes when they're in the tub. So because your mind cannot differentiate, being in a
Mm.
Titanic or being in an ice bath where you have control over getting out, and you're in a safe spot and you're doing it for other reasons other
Yeah,
than
you're almost you're
survival.
you're you're giving your body and your subconscious less information for it to make decisions on how it wants to respond to the stimulus.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's cool. And yeah, dude, I talk about that almost every day when I'm doing the cold plunge on my live stream. I don't want to do it. Like it's
hmm
not easy. It does not get easy any day, but that's a whole part of this process of doing this morning routine. I'm checking off a box that I know that not only do I not want to do, but 99% of people will probably never do this in their
right.
lives, and I'm going to do
hmm
it every day. And I'm going to push myself to do it longer and to be in more control. So, do you have a
That's
routine
awesome.
that you go through to prepare yourself? I know you said you visualize being in an empty space and getting into this state of mind, but do you have any other routines that you go through metaphysically or with your breath or with words that you speak before getting in? Like what other tricks do you have for people?
Yeah, taken some time to yourself to allow yourself to come into the present moment, which is one of the things that ice really helps you. But prior to that, because we're so much in our minds, and you can tell, from people's questions of like, is this going to happen? Should I do this? Should I do this? And to try to get them just to stop thinking so much, don't have any preconceptions of like what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's more about that, just kind of deviating, kind of that, allowing just to be thinking. So meditation and breath work, and that's really our goal here is for people not to just come and want to do ice, is for people to see the importance of meditation and breath work in their lives. because ice is just like if you were competing. A competition is going to show all the training that you've been doing, but it's not the most important thing. If you get first place, second place, it doesn't matter. It's showing you how much all the practice that you're doing, it's really how it's paying off. But ice is, it's just the last part of it. I call it the yoga poses. Everybody wants to stand on their head. We all want to do the ice. But these are things that come from the East that when they come to us in the Americas, we get so caught up with that, but we don't see everything that comes behind it. And that's really what's important. This is because you can access this anytime. It's not, you don't need to have ice to feel what ice makes you feel. And so, yeah.
Yeah, that's actually, I hate to keep bringing this back to my thing, but it's so directly correlated. Oh, yeah. My morning routine, I have it set up so like in the photo of the morning routine setup, there is 4 quadrants, and each quadrant represents a element of the earth. So wind, fire, earth, and water. And you can get all 4 of those things to physiologically give your body a boost and give your mind a boost and to better your mood, better your energy, all these things. And they're free. They come with earth. So I talk about how I get those things. I'm hydrating and I'm going in the water, in the cold exposure, right? So there's the water, the grounding as I'm doing the breath work, the wind, that's the air. I'm getting as much oxygen into every bit of my body as I can through the breath work. And then fire as I'm getting the sun. I'm getting the sunlight. Even if it's cloudy, like I've spent days playing sports in heavy overcast and still left with a sunburn. You are still getting enough UV of different spectrums to be able to physiologically make that change and to absorb vitamin D into your body.
That's awesome.
You don't need to buy a bunch of crazy things. You don't need to buy anything. It's all right there. You just need to choose, right? You just need to choose like, hey, if it's raining today, am I going to go outside and do breath work in the fresh air, or am I just going to skip it? It's so much easier. And you're going to give yourself so many different excuses and reasons and for comfort's sake, to not go outside and do it. It's just water. It's just wetness. Like, what does it matter? And I mean, especially because I do the cold plunge before I do the breath work, it doesn't matter if I'm wet. I'm already wet. I'm already wet and frozen.
Yeah.
What does it matter? So all I'm doing is creating a routine that works for me, that incorporates all these things, that has the least amount of barriers of entry to make saying yes to them as easy as possible. Right. So yeah, like I do wish more people could experience a place like Raices on a more regular basis and be able to experience the difference that if they're actually putting energy into it, of what they actually get back out of it, because it's huge. It's monstrous.
No, and what you're doing, it's amazing. It's very inspiring, because it's one thing also to do ice when sometimes there's people around you, someone's already lined up behind you. And I know what it is when you do it when there's nobody around, that it's really just you and there's nothing stopping you from going right back into bed. And it sometimes takes a little more hesitation than when there's actually people. So it's very inspiring to see you do that, because that is the biggest thing. We want to give people tools that they can access for free, and it's sustainable for anybody in the world, from the richest person to the poorest person. Breathwork, ice, and temazcales, nature has given it to us, and it's been used for thousands of years. It's here now. It was here back then, and it's going to continue to be here. So, I went through phases where I thought maybe psychedelics was the answer to a lot of the problems, but it's not accessible to everybody, and it's not sustainable. So but when you start to really see these practices, like you said, that you're doing with the elements, you come to see that actually life provides the cure for a lot of these things, even fasting. I'm huge fan of fasting. And again, those are things that I can practice at any given moment. And it's not just exclusively for this culture or this culture. No, we all have access to these things. So for people to walk out of here with just at least one more tool, because like you said, I mean, it's hard to get cold water in Vallarta, but there's ways during winter in the morning, like you said, you can't get enough You can get it at least cold enough where it'll take your breath away for a little bit, and that's good enough. But that's something we're gonna have anytime, and so I think that's amazing what you're doing, because you're really showing that tools that can be accessed by anybody at any time, and I think that's amazing.
And to go back to it not being easy, like every single day, like I film it and I do it live stream on purpose because it keeps me accountable. It makes me have to show up while also showing other people what else is possible. So when I set up my tripod on my phone and it's facing the cold plunge and I'm sitting there on the outside and I'm like thinking of anything that I can talk about. What is a topic that we could start talking about right now to prolong the events that I know are about to transpire, and that is me being hella uncomfortable in this cold water. So I'll start blabbing on, be like, you know what? I'm just going to stop making excuses. Let's get into this. Like I have this routine I do. I just take a couple deep breaths, slow, controlled exhale, and then I repeat 3 times. I say, cold water cannot hurt me. Cold water cannot hurt me. Cold water cannot hurt me. My body is strong and my mind is stronger. Cold water cannot hurt me. Take a couple more breaths. And while I go in the water, continuing to hold those strong, controlled exhales, and I just go for it. And as the faster I can control that exhale breath, and that is what shifts from the sympathetic to the parasympathetic, and that takes your nervous system, takes the control back into your hands, and that's how I survive, and that's how I get by. Like, it's the wildest things, but your words are so powerful. Like, you're training your body and your mind and your subconscious to believe that what you're saying. So yes, cold water cannot hurt me. It's not going to hurt me. I'm just going to go in there and I'm just going to do this thing. It's uncomfortable. Definitely uncomfortable.
Exactly. Yes. No,
so
I agree.
How long? What have you found in your anecdotal experience with a bunch of different people? And I assume you've looked into a lot of the science behind cold plunging and other people's experience. What do you think is kind of best practice for frequency and duration of doing ice baths?
So it's relative to each individual. It's, going out running for 15 minutes can give you so much energy for the rest of the day. To help you feel motivated, you have dopamine in your body, you just feel great. Now, if you go out and do the same activity for 3 hours doing a marathon, I guarantee you're going to create a lot of mental strength doing that, because you're going to have to surpass a lot of different mental barriers. But you're going to completely drain your body from energy. So it's most likely if you do a marathon in the morning, you're not going to have the same energy that if you went out running for 15. So people with the ice is the same thing. What are you looking to get out of the ice? It's if you want to, people say it's like, oh, I left and I didn't really feel the energy that I heard. I was actually like very tired and felt very relaxed. If you go over 2.5 minutes, your body is utilizing so much energy to keep you warm. It's burning so many calories, burning so much sugar, so much white fat afterwards. And we do this at night. This is really when we'll go more for like time purposes, because you zonk out when you go to sleep, and it's amazing. It's awesome. But when I do it in the mornings, I'll do 3 minutes. All I need is that dopamine boost, a kick into my cardiovascular system. I just need enough to get the benefits that a lot of people are looking for. And it's also important to understand is you wouldn't go to the gym if you've never been to it and then start putting in plates and then expect to lift them. Yeah. You gradually work up to it, and people, the thing about it with ice, you have to treat it the same way. You have to understand that after coming out of the ice, your body has to recuperate. So what's the point of being able to do 5 minutes if when you come out of the ice, it's going to take you half an hour to stop, to control yourself from not shivering? You don't want to. And now that you're shivering, your nervous system is activated. So now you're going into the parasympathetic system. It happens a lot that sometimes when people, if they go in and they come out within a minute, they actually come out maybe even feeling frustrated. And you can tell they're just like also feel like they don't feel motivated because they feel like they couldn't do something.
They failed their expectations.
Right. And all they did was just kick in their sympathetic system, fight or flight. you know?
Hmm.
So all they did is went in, kicked it up, cortisol level went up, adrenaline went up, and then you come out because you didn't realize that that's actually going to come down if you just breathe through it. So then you come out and then you're left with this sensation, opposed to, waiting, being able to trust the process through breath work. In about a minute and a half, you see the phenomenon in everybody's faces. So when they're in the sympathetic system, you can tell right away, just the tension in their facial muscles and their shoulders. The breathing becomes normal, heart rate. When we've even had people before and during connected to a heart rate monitor, you can see it just going up, up, up. And then it's incredible that within like seconds, normally about 45 seconds to a minute and 30, depending on the person, all of a sudden just like this release in the tension of their muscles, their breathing starts to come back to normal, and their heart rate starts to decrease, and gets down to 40, 50 beats per minute. And then you see it in the person's face. It's like they're finally calm. And then from there, this is where it gets interesting, because this is where you want to maintain yourself. It's not about pushing it, because then you'll go right back into the sympathetic system.
There's a point of diminishing returns. Yeah.
Right. So it's only been about a handful. We were talking about this the other day, and you're actually one of those people that don't necessarily focus on time, like how long have I been here, this and that are more just kind of feeling out the experience. And this is what it's supposed to do. Your ISIS gives you sensitivity to perceive yourself at a physical, emotional, and mental level. And I always tell people, meet yourself at the part that you need to work on the most. So a lot of people we get that, are mentally and emotionally strong, and they can do 15 minutes. But after 10 minutes, you can start to tell there's goosebumps, maybe signs of starting shivering, tension in the muscles. And when we see any of these signs, we tell them from the beginning, I'm going to pull you out. And it happens a lot that they'll say, no, I'm fine. I'm fine here. And they don't understand. They forget about their body.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to understand that we're all three aspects happening simultaneously in a human experience. And you don't want to end, you don't want to cross the finish line, leaving any of those parts behind you, because they're all true. You're not just physical, you're not just emotions or thoughts, you're also physical. And you need to also respect and meet yourself at that level. And it doesn't mean that you can't ever do 15 minutes, but you're going to work up to it. You're going to work up to it. So, yeah.
I've never really understood. There's a lot of people that I see doing there, and I try not to bring judgment into anything, especially into a space like that, because it is such a barriers down, very intimate setting. So I don't hold judgment. I just assume that there is part of their process. But there's a lot of people that I see only put in the bottom half of their body, but then they stay in for 15 minutes. It's like, well, wouldn't you get, like, I'm thinking in my thought process, wouldn't I get more benefit from doing a shorter stint while challenging your control elements of your body and putting in more of your body for a shorter amount of time instead of sitting in from your waist down but being in there for 15 minutes? Because then it just looks like an ego lift with bad form. I can lift this heavy weight, but I'm not doing it properly. I'm using poor muscle recruitment patterns and likely might just injure myself, but I'm doing it just to say that I did it.
Exactly. And we've realized that people that have been coming for consecutively for even a year, every single one of them has decreased their time that they're in the tub. Once you start to understand what all this implies, everybody, just not to name names, but even myself, there was times where people would be like, oh, the Iceman, you're going to be in there like 20, 30 minutes. No, there's no need for that. It's not a competition. So yeah, it is interesting to see just kind of how, I can say that in the beginning, I also wasn't competitive with myself or with others, but slowly, you start to realize that there's nobody else feels, thinks, and has the physical body that I do. So I'm going to focus on what's good for me and what I'm trying to use this for. And every time is different. There's some times where it's emotional. You can tell you're physically, there's no pain anywhere, no problem. but emotionally, it brings up something that you might not want to deal with. And it's very hard. So you also have to go in it with the open mind of saying like, okay, I always allow ice to talk to you, because ice within the first 5 seconds is going to tell you exactly where you have inflammation. And you see, that's the first thing people will say for the first time: my hip, my leg, my shoulder, like whatever it is that, that has inflammation, they say right away. So right
Yeah.
there, ice just spoke to you. And if you're
Inflammation, tension.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The reason why athletes use it. So that's the first level, and then after about 2 minutes, it's mental and emotional. It's really what you're trying to understand. And sometimes people don't want to deal with an emotion. It happened to us the other day where I would ask this person to close her eyes, and every time she would do that, you can tell that she was having a nightmare, and she would open them right back up, and then she would just look at me and just be like, "Is my leg's gonna freeze?" Or I was like, "No, you're okay, you're okay." She's like, "Okay." She would close them back up, and again, you can tell that she was just going through something emotional. So it's not always physical, it's not always emotional, and sometimes also you're overthinking. Maybe you have something to do that day, or you heard a friend walk in, so I want to talk to him about this, and the second that you lose that focus into just the breath, even if it's just a thought of like, what am I going to order? What chocolate should I order after this? That's done. You see it in the heart rate monitor. It starts going up little by little. You lost it.
Yeah.
So that's really what I find it really cool. I tell people, if people understood how difficult it is to get into that space of awareness, where you're no longer in mind, emotions, or in your physical, you're just observing, the ice can get you there in 2 minutes. That's amazing. So that to me is really the real practice of this. And then just how long you can stay there doesn't matter. You got it, and you can work up to it, but
Yeah. And
it's a process.
I'm happy that no one else can hear what's going on inside of my head, because then they would hear
Yeah.
all, whether it's my ego or my subconscious or my nervous system protecting me, but I hear like the voices giving me every reason to get out. Be like, okay, yeah,
Right.
you did pretty good today. Yeah, it's been a couple minutes. Yeah, you feel good.
Right.
You can get out now. And then I'm just aware of that. I'm like, no, I'm gonna get out when I say I'm gonna get out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna let my nervous system trick me into getting out by praising me or giving me accolades or saying it's good enough of what I did. It's like,
That's
no.
crazy. Yes.
Yeah, so like I tell that voice, I'm like, no, you shut the fuck up. This is my body. I'm gonna do with it as I please. And then I count in breaths, because with the breathing that I try to do, if I'm not talking or doing something else, like yesterday, like when I was in on Wednesday and I was talking to you most of the time, I ended up staying in for 6 minutes, which I can't usually talk that much while I'm in there, but I guess I was feeling it. I was in the zone. Plus I've been practicing, right? A practice. Who knew?
Right.
And so I'll say like, no, I'll stay in for 4 more breaths, which I know is going to be about 30 seconds, right? Just a deep in and a slow, controlled exhale right to the bottom. And do that and just focus in on the breath. Like you say, shut everything else off, shut those thoughts down, be in control of the breath. And then I check back in. How am I feeling? How are my legs feeling? How are my feet? I keep my hands out because I've had minor frostbite in the past. So they get pretty painful, which is something I am looking forward to working through as I go through this journey. But as for right now, I just keep them out. And yes, then I say, okay, well, how much longer can it go here? I'm not looking for any answers from my subconscious. I'm not looking for my ego to tell me something. How long can I stay in here? Check in. Okay, I'm going to do another 4 breaths. And I stay in a little bit longer. And then when I feel that I've hit anywhere between 3 and 6 minutes, I'm happy. I get out, got a big smile on my face, move my legs around a little bit to get the feeling back in them so I can start walking, and I heat up just fine. I don't have any problems with shivers.
Yeah.
I don't have any problems anymore. And so the ego is definitely a big one as well, because like you say, people want to push. People want to see what they're capable of. But that, when you're playing with cold, that's kind of a double-edged sword.
Absolutely.
When I first started doing cold plunges back in Canada, one of my best friends, I won't name him because this is a bit of an embarrassing story. He would always be the last one out of the water. We would always all go in at the same time and have a clock running. And, some of us would get out at 3 minutes, and Nick would, oh shoot, I said his name. Whoops. Sorry, Nick. And he would stay in longer. And I don't know if it's because we would be out in the cold air, warming up slower and more naturally, that none of us, me included, would have any issues heating back up. But then Nick would come out of the water and he would be shivering, and we'd go straight, because we'd all be starting to get cold just from being outside in the rain or the snow or whatever it is outside, and walk across the parking lot to get to our cars and get back in the heat. And he would go straight from the hot or the cold water into the heat, and he would be like shivering so bad.
Yeah.
And we were kind of wondering, okay, I wonder if that's because you're heating up so much faster than us, and it's just too much of a shock to your system, and therefore your nervous system is just out of whack. So what we started doing was we'd go for a walk or two lap around the lake. It's like less than a kilometer loop. It was a little man-made like they made for wakeboarding events. But so we started doing that, and one day Nick was, I'm sorry, Nick, for repeatedly naming you here, but he went in for 15 minutes, and we threw on our sweaters and our sweatpants after getting dry a little bit and did a lap around the lake, and he didn't even know, but he peed himself.
Wow.
He didn't feel it. Yeah, because his body was so numb because he pushed too long. He might have even done more than 15 minutes, but that was like a big reality check for him of like, okay, like if I can't feel a movement in my body like that, that's like I should be feeling this. I don't think this is a good thing. And then he's really, really started to dial it back and understand that pushing the limits isn't going to help me at all. Like I need to find a balance here.
Not a nice, right? Absolutely. You said it. I think checking in on yourself when you're in the ice, it's so important, because it's the place, the time where you come into this, you're finally not so much in your mind. It's this place of, dopamine gets shot up. I tell people when they say like, oh no, I can stay in longer, I'm not going to listen to somebody that's high. I'm telling you, because I'm seeing, this is what's always, even myself, there's been times where I've been in the ice and I'm so disconnected from my mind, and I'm such in a peaceful place because finally I'm not with all these crazy things my mind is saying, that I have to open my eyes, look at myself, and then I'll see my body full of goosebumps, and I'm like, okay, this is enough. But I have to constantly check in on myself, because I also disconnect to that point where I can put myself in a dangerous situation. So it's always understanding that, yeah, that's what this is about, is to be able to, and you can do this at any time, check in on yourself, how you're doing in these different levels. And so, yeah, it is very important for people to be aware of these things that can happen after ice if they're not careful with it.
So I got a question for you. And in the venture of your ice bath and Raices Chocolate facility there, how have you kept track of how many cold plunge virginities you've taken?
Oh man, that's a good question. We actually, a couple of weeks ago, we were doing the math of about average of how many people. It's a little bit over 1,500 people that we've seen since we started.
How many people, that's how many new faces you've had come through your doors and sit in your ice bath.
Not new faces. A lot of them are people that have come before, but okay. That's how many people we have registered in the list.
So yeah, I wonder how many first times have been on your watch.
Yeah, every Sunday we get a good amount of people, but every single week there's always new people that come in, and it's funny to always see the friend that's done it before, his big smile on his face when he's like, "Oh, I invited my friend over." I was like, "Okay, cool."
Yeah, totally.
So yeah, it's been wonderful. I mean, you learn so much too, and you also gain so much for being there in front when someone just lets go of something. You can feel this, like, I mean, after Sundays, Laura and I will sit there. We'll sometimes get in the same tub ourselves, and we'll talk when we're in the tub. And it's just this feeling of so much gratitude and also a lot of motivation. We feel motivated, every person that goes in there, because I know it's not easy. I know that dealing with yourself, being with yourself is not easy. This is why it's, hard sometimes to be in there, because it's going to intensify your emotions, your thoughts, your physical pain. And sometimes we don't want to deal with that. So it takes a lot for someone to actually even think about the idea of coming here. And I tell people it's crazy how the mind works, because sometimes people will go in, they'll do about a minute or a minute and a half, and then come out. And then they say, it's like, man, I couldn't do it. And I'm just sitting there like, don't allow your mind to make your experience less than where it really is. You went in there like, and the mind is still always thinking negative. Oh, you did a minute and a half, but you didn't do 2 minutes. Oh, you did 2 minutes, but you didn't put your hands in. So it's just crazy. It's just like, no, you went in and, respect yourself for that and give yourself credit for that. Because if not, you're allowing the same process, you're allowing the mind to do the same patterns that it always does. And I think ice really can help you break patterns in different levels if you really utilize it for that.
100%. I mean, what better disrupts the status quo patterns of your life and of your thought processes better than getting into a freezing cold tub full of ice and water? Like, nothing is interrupting a pattern better than that.
Yeah, I agree.
Super cool.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah.
So when you have newcomers come in, what is the process that you explain to them? Like, I see you sit down with people on their first times and you're walking people through that. What is the advice that you give people?
Mm-hmm. So I first start telling them the different sensations that they're going to experience throughout the body. And that just comes from my own experience of my first time. Mm-hmm. So I think it's important for people to know what happens, say, in your feet or in your hands. Naturally, the reaction that most people tend to get on their first time. So then this way, it's not a surprise when they get in there. I tell them always to trust their bodies, that their body will adjust to the temperature. I tell them to look at it as phases. So there's different phases in ice. There's about 5 different phases. And just like you said, I mean, there's a time where you even feel like, okay, I'm fine now. And then the mind's like, okay, we did it. So now we can get out. This is awesome. Like, no, that's actually another phase. So that's one thing I've learned, because when you overcome that, then there's like, oh, wow, like I'm somewhere new. The mind is not even trying to negotiate anymore. So to look at it as phases, at the first initial reaction, the experience is not going to be all like that. I mean, or else I don't think you and I would be sitting here talking about this and doing it as a daily thing. So to look at it like that, to break it down so they don't see the whole thing as just one big experience. To the only 2 things that you're going to have control over is the breath. So to slow your breath down and long exhales, and your muscles, to be aware the way that when we stress and there are any situations, this is why we go and get massages, the muscles tense. So, and also where there's tension in muscles is where you feel the ice, why athletes use it. So don't tense your body so you can feel so much of the cold. Relax as much as possible. Closing your eyes. We also tell them to get in front of the tub before going in. Take 4 or 5 deep breaths in and out. And then you're going to splash your face 3 times. And this is important. There's what is called the mammalian diver's reflex located around our eyes. All mammals have this, and this is going to make the heart rate decrease, and also help us regulate the temperature. And you'll feel it once you splash your face for the first time. It feels really cold. Second time, it's like, okay, it feels a little bit better. And third, you're a little more acclimated to it. So this avoids that initial shock that a lot of people go if you just go into the ice and they have this huge, experience. So those are some of the things that we kind of talk through them about it before going in for their first time. And I also tell them, because I'll sit there and talk to them about 10 minutes. And I said, if everything that I just said, you forget in the ice, which can happen because of the experience, I said, don't worry. Just turn around, look at me, and just follow my breath. Because just like if someone is having an anxiety attack, it's
Exactly.
the lack of being
Exactly.
able to know how to breathe right, breathing through your mouth and hyperventilating, lack of oxygen in the brain, and makes you feel even more anxious. And it just turns into this anxiety attack by just even sometimes looking at somebody. We'll even stand behind them and just breathe.
You're basically
And
being a what's that little device for musicians where it ticks back and forth? You can set the pace of it. A metronome. You're being their breathing metronome.
right. And it's helped us too. Laura, when Laura and I do it, the same thing. We're sitting there right next to each other, and if anytime we're having troubles, the other person won't say anything. Just breathe, and naturally, because you're so alert, you can hear like 3 times as much. So if someone's right next to you breathing, naturally your breath is going to start to sync up with that. So those are some of the things that we tell people before going into the ice for the first time.
Right on. So what what is next? What is the I know this whole creation wasn't planned out and it all has just fallen into your lap and you've just been following the alignment of this vision that you have. But do you have any goals as to what's next for Raices Chocolate and the cold plunges?
Yeah, so actually just yesterday we finally got rid of our dining table, which was actually still the main table in the front area of the
Yeah.
cafeteria. And we have tables and chairs for people to be able to come. We're now open throughout the week. So we want this to be something that people can incorporate in their everyday lives and to have an alternative to a lot of different things. So to even caffeine, to coffee, it's having some of these chocolate drinks. Um, Ice bath, it is something that we want to eventually incorporate on a daily basis. Um, Eventually something like what you're using as an ice chest or a freezer would be something that we would like to get into to have a little more consistency and for people, accessibility for people other than just for 2 days. So
Yeah.
that's kind of really what we're aiming for to just now I feel like after a year, we finally have an idea of what all this has turned into. And then from there, now we can start to grow with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that's what I did because I didn't want to have to. I wanted to make it as easy to access as possible, right? I didn't want to have to go out and get ice because that's a barrier.
You're right.
That's an excuse to say no. So I bought
That's a
a
great
chest
one.
freezer, a 10 cubic foot freezer from Costco, and I bought some silicone sealant. And inside the inside lining just sealed up everywhere there's seams, nice thick glob, let it set, cleaned it out, and I fill it full of water and I plug it in. And within about 24 hours, I've got damn cold water. It builds up ice along
Amazing.
the sidewalls. Once it gets cold and some ice buildup, I only have to leave it plugged in for about 12 hours, if that, every day, in order to maintain that cold water. And then if it's just me and my wife that are using it, which we do use it in the evenings as well. We love doing it before bed. Same thing. Like it just like cools down the core temperature, especially in the summertime. It's hot and it's humid and sticky and
Right.
gross here. Like it definitely helps. So we're using it sometimes twice a day. And so we need to eliminate those barriers. So we did that. And I mean, you can take it a step further. You can buy a $30 little plug-in timer for the ice tub so that every single day you have your 7 days of the week and you have a timer set so that it turns on and turns off at the same time or the time scheduled each day. That way you don't have to unplug it. You don't have to worry about it because it's always being taken care of. So that
Oh,
way you
that's
can keep
amazing.
a steady, cool temperature. Yeah, and then of course, every once in a while you just pull the drain plug and rinse it out, give it a good wash. Well, although same thing with you guys, we try to go in clean and have a rinse off before we get in, make sure our feet aren't sandy or dirty because it's in the backyard or too much sweat on us or any oils. I mean, we don't use any creams or lotions or things like that have chemicals in them anyway, so it's not too big of a deal, but we still go for a rinse off just
Right.
to keep it
Right.
clean. And that way, as many days out of the week as possible, like, we'll go for a 2 week stretch where we have it consistent, ready at our fingertips anytime we
Wow.
want.
But I like that what you said. It's just to really eliminate as many reasons, you might have to just, get you out of doing the ice bath, preparing prior to actually before you doing ice bath. I think it's definitely a good idea.
Yeah.
Not creating excuses.
So with your exactly. So with your goal of being open and having more seating, do you leave the backyard open to guests every day for the cafe, let's call it? A little bistro?
Yes, so we do have some outdoor seating. So the entire back area is also open during the week for you to come out, and if you want to have your chocolate or your food outside, that's also an option as well.
I don't know why anyone, unless it's raining, would want to sit inside when they have that beautiful backyard that you guys have. You guys have done such a good job making that place just a vibe. It is so cool.
Thanks, man. Yeah.
Of course. So they leave it open. So why don't you just give a quick example of a couple things that are on your menu, if you don't mind, just to give a little brief look at what kind of food you guys actually serve.
Sure. So one of the most traditional dishes in Mexico, it's mole. Mole is the original recipe is said to have 100 ingredients. Mole we have is 30 different ingredients. Doesn't have as many, but one of the main components of it is cacao. Mm-hmm. So that's something that. So I'm from Puebla. So mole is from Puebla. My dad is there, so he actually sends me the mole. It's homemade mole, and then when we receive it, we add cacao to it.
Oh, beautiful.
So we have chilaquile moles. People that don't know what chilaquiles are, my wife calls them breakfast nachos.
Yeah, that's not bad. That's not far off.
Tortilla chips smothered with the sauce, cheese, sour cream, onions, and avocado. Then we also do cacao waffles. We don't use any flour for those. So we have that available. A vegetarian sandwich, which the patty we make from scratch with portobello mushrooms and walnuts, different other spices, and grilled onions. And then also focaccia bread, which we make ourselves with rosemary, garlic, and sea salt. Also have seasonal hummus bowl. I'm looking at the menu here. And
the waffles are like a fan favorite, I would say. They're so good. And then what is that? What is the whipped cream that's kind of like a pink flavor? What do you put in there?
Oh, that's dates, walnuts, and water. Mm-hmm. So there's no sugar in it. It's just dates for the
that's the syrup. That's what you use for the syrup.
Uh-huh.
What about the like a whipped cream?
Oh, so depending on the fruits that we're utilizing for making ganaches for the chocolate, we'll also turn that into a marmalade and then make that into a cream for the waffles. So it's sometimes it's strawberry, sometimes it's other fruits, but yeah.
Very cool. Very cool.
And it's and this again is just the way that I am. Is not doing it for any reason other than just the way that I believe that food should be treated. I don't think it's about eating healthy. I think it's about eating just natural things. Don't eat processed things. And so we take care of, even when we're making chocolate, for like temperatures of different things, like even oils or whatever it is we're cooking, to try to preserve as much nutrients as we can. We don't use any refined oils, salts, or sugars. One of the things about coming into Raicess is, I always knew that it was a challenge having a kitchen that everybody walks through, so everybody can see everything that I'm doing and using. Now we have the restaurant in the other side, but we used to do everything in this house. And through that, I'm not afraid for anybody to open up any cabinet and see, because I would not sell anything that I wouldn't eat myself. I mean, that actually the menu is done. So if there was in the beginning that we didn't have so much people, we knew that we could eat it ourselves. So it's created also with that intention.
Oh, that's such a cool, very, very sustainable way to do it. And I hope everyone else that hears this gets to appreciate and have an opportunity to go eat the food that you guys make, because it's incredible. And it's not about one modality over another. It's about whole natural ingredients that are delicious.
Thanks, Clay.
Of course. So one more question I try to ask everyone on here. I know we talked about a lot about routines with the cold plunge and with the breath work. Is there any other routines that you do for Eduardo, for no one other than Eduardo, to fill your cup and to give yourself the best chance of being the best possible version of yourself? Is there any other routines that you try to do? And of course, you don't have to be perfect with it. You don't have to, you can be on or off, but something that you like to do that contributes to that.
I would say that we talked, I guess, a little bit about this, about I think fasting. Fasting is something that I really enjoy doing. It really helps me become in tune with myself and also how I am with others. It makes me more sensitive to perceiving how someone else is perceiving me.
Oh,
Actually, even before I
interesting.
do like a class or a course, or even like here with you, I went for a run. I always do that. I fast even the night before, just so I can be more clear-headed. So that's
I
something
love
that I
that.
do find important, especially when I'm going to be engaging in like situation like this, to not have that kind of like little bit of a fog sometimes that you might have. But that's just something personally that really works with my body and with my routine. I wasn't always like that, but I do find it to be something that helps me a lot in a lot of different aspects of myself.
Beautiful. All these things that we've talked about today are all not they're definitely not single faceted. They are multifaceted things that benefit you. And I mean, that's
Hmm.
why we're seeing such an overlap in all these healthy routines being adopted by biohackers, by the spiritual world, by the holistic health world. People of all different modalities and different spaces are all taking these things that we're talking about as their own and bringing it into their practice. And there's, there's science for it serving all of them.
Yeah,
So why not? And I think they're great practices.
absolutely. 100% agree.
Cool, man. Well, it's been an hour and 20 minutes. It's been the longest one I've had so far. We had the endurance. I think we had a great conversation, man. Thank you for
I
taking the
enjoyed it.
time and talking about your guys' journey and your experience and what it is that you provide for the community with Raices Chocolate. And actually, I do have one last question. If you were to say you have a overarching statement of like what you're trying to serve, whether it's the community or the city or the world, what is the goal with you and Laura and Raices Chocolate?
What our biggest mission is to give people a tool that they can have to be able to help themselves in rough times. And this aspect of community, which in my personal life, I never realized how important it really was. So also for people to feel part of something else and feel understood, because I think also when ICE it challenges us, but it makes you also very vulnerable to see that you know, um, we're all being challenged in different ways. So then that really kind of creates this like, wow, I'm not the only one that's going through this. So by having this community, you have this sense of like being understood and being felt part of something bigger.
That's interesting that you say that because it's kind of yeah it's on Sunday. It's my church.
We have somebody that comes in and says, "Hi guys, what did you say? Glad I'm in church," and something like that. But she sees it as that, yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean,
Hmm.
it's the same thing how you can take meditation, manifestation, visualization, and cross that with prayer. And it's all falls into the same category. It's all the same thing. It's you're increasing the connectivity with yourself and your environment and everything around you. So
Right.
I think it is church. And
Yes.
I love going to Racing's church on Sundays.
Thanks, Clay. Very much appreciated. You're very much part of this community and been a huge inspiration. And what you're doing, I think it's amazing because it's just really getting that word out for a lot of these different things that people can have access to. So thank you for your time and for
Thank
your
you.
support throughout all these different months. And keep up the good work, man, because it really is
Of
very
course, man.
motivating to see your process and having you to share your experiences and all this and your perspective.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Well, we're going to wrap this up. Thank you guys for tuning in to the Vitalic Performance Podcast. This is Eduardo and Raices Chocolate. We're signing out. Bye-bye.